Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. And today, I'm asking the question, why are safety features always an afterthought? It seems like in the history of modern invention, safety is always second. And so what got me thinking about this actually is ChatGPT, one of the most modern inventions that we have. And we all know it's been a world-changing rager since like 2022, and it spawned a legion of competitors. But the recent news on ChatGPT really got me thinking about this premise. And if you didn't know, OpenAI has just launched a new parental control system for ChatGPT. Now, this is aimed at providing better and safer experiences for teen users. Remember, they fall under COPA as well, so 13 and up is the acceptable number for ChatGPT, although 13 is a very arbitrary number, and that's a whole other story I've talked about before. So, this announcement by them came this past Monday, and it follows a lawsuit, of course, basically filed by a California family alleging that the chatbot actually encouraged their son to commit suicide. So, the new controls enable parents to set specific usage hours, disable voice mode, prevent chat history from being saved, those kinds of things as well. Parents can also opt out of having their teens' data used to train OpenAI models. That, quite frankly, is something that we all should have had on day one, but that's not how OpenAI works, or pretty much any of them. So OpenAI stated in a blog post that these controls allow parents to link their accounts with their teen accounts, and therefore customizing settings for a safe and age-appropriate experience. Parents will receive notifications if ChatGPT detects potential signs of self-harm in teens. I'm obviously a fan of that. And a specialist team will also review these signs and contact parents through email, text, or mobile alerts. OpenAI says they're also working on ways to contact law enforcement if a parent cannot be reached during an imminent threat. And so these changes obviously come amid increased scrutiny over ChatGPT's safety for teens, right? So these are things that should have been there right out of the gate. And it's not just for teens. If you've got an adult that's acting suicidal as well, there should be flags in some way, shape, or form for this. But here we are. So in August, a lawsuit was filed against OpenAI by the parents. If you didn't know this story, I've talked about this before. The parents of 16-year-old Adam Rain, who allegedly received information about suicide tactics from ChatGPT. And so there are some safety measures built into ChatGPT, but they're very easy to work around in the same way we know workarounds to have it write us legal documents, those kinds of things. So Adam, 16-year-old Adam, was able to bypass them by simply stating that the details that he needed were for a story that he was writing, and the chatbot was more than happy to oblige. So OpenAI CEO Sam Altman emphasized in that post that the company prioritizes safety over privacy and freedom for teens as well. So I think this is a huge issue in general, but it really got me just thinking about the overarching premises. Why are safety features like this always an afterthought, or at least seem like it? Why does it have to take a suicide, literally, to do this? But I think that's actually one of the things that I'm thinking about that has always been with innovation. This is a multifaceted issue here. And so let's talk about this, because this is, I think, in some part human nature. And that doesn't excuse OpenAI or any other company that doesn't have safety features, but companies often prioritize getting a product released very quickly to market to basically capture the share, right? They want to be the dominant player. So performance, aesthetics, cost reduction, all those kinds of things are emphasized because they sell. Safety doesn't. And then if you think about it, safety features are usually only basically added, without any kind of short-term return, on investment, meaning you're adding cost, but you're not really seeing the return because people aren't buying it because it has better safety features, unless it's like a vehicle. But if you think about even the vehicles, like the first vehicles that came out, didn't have seatbelts. They didn't have windshield wipers. They didn't have crash detection and crumple zones and all these kinds of things. These things were essentially added by virtue of regulation, right? Unless regulators or buyers demand them, these can be delayed and delayed and delayed. Many safety innovations like seatbelts or airbags or even, two-factor authentication, encryption, fire codes. I mean, there's so many different safety features, right? They only became standards after major accidents forced them to happen, or lawsuits as a result of those major accidents, or data breaches in the case of security, because the company, let's say it's Ford or GM or whoever, put in the first seatbelt. I know Volvo was the one that created the 3-point harness, but there were lap belts initially in the 60s that, would keep you in the car, but still break your back. We're constantly improving these things, but the seatbelts are only added after accidents, after lawsuits, these kinds of things. And there's probably more things to this than what I'm thinking about here, but I think these are the big ones. And I think safety can sell. It's just not sexy. And so that, I think, is a balance, right? And so if you're looking at anything like a move fast, break things tech industry that just decides to spin up social media and an arbitrary age, like 13 is enough, when it clearly is not, and the longitudinal studies prove it. And mind you, this was done back in the AOL era in the 1990s when this was arbitrarily created. We've got a problem on our hands, because unlike the real actual evidence of, let's say, hitting a tree in a car that is completely unsafe, and then the ensuing legislation and requirements of all automakers to do this, because if Ford gets into that accident and it's now creating crumple zones and seatbelts and has a much safer car, GM's got to do it, right? Mercedes has got to do it. Volvo's got to do it. All of them have to do it. So we don't have something like this here. Right? The only thing that I can think of that really cajoles an industry where there is no formal regulation, at least here in the United States, are class action lawsuits. So if there's a class action lawsuit against OpenAI, for example, the Anthropics of the world would take note to say, oh God, we're doing that too, and we don't want to get sued in that manner, right? So when you have basically a governing body that doesn't put legislation or regulation on these kinds of things to require some kind of safety to prevent what should be easily preventable deaths, class action is the way to go. And I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. So there you go. I think it's an interesting one, but quite frankly, I think this is why we just have safety features as an afterthought, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Hopefully I'm wrong. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please, attempt to stay private, informed. Take care.